The late afternoon sun burned low over the dusty plains of the small western town, casting long, golden shadows across the cracked streets. A young mother, her clothes threadbare and smeared with dust, trudged along the edge of the main road, her small child clinging weakly to her hand. Every step was a battle, hunger gnawed at her insides, and her legs felt like lead. She had left the town's only marketplace hours ago, hoping for work or charity, but the townsfolk had no pity. Few offered her more than a glance of pity before returning to their chores, their livelihoods, or their own families. The child, barely 4, whimpered softly, his small stomach clearly empty, eyes rimmed with exhaustion and tears. The mother's heart ached at the sound. She whispered reassurances, words that sounded hollow even to her own ears. "Almost there, darling, we'll find something to eat soon." Her pride had carried her this far, but now desperation threatened to take hold. She looked up and saw a small ranch at the outskirts of town, wooden fences weathered by wind and sun, a smoke plume curling lazily from the chimney. Hoping against hope, she approached, each step slower than the last. The rancher, a large man with broad shoulders and a face carved by years of sun and wind, appeared on the porch. His eyes, though sharp, softened as they fell on her ragged figure and the trembling child. "Can I help you, ma'am?" he asked, voice steady, calm, yet curious. She swallowed her pride, though it burned her throat, and spoke. "Sir, I have no food. My child, he's so hungry. I can work for bread. Anything at all." Her voice trembled, a mixture of fear, shame, and raw hope. The rancher's gaze studied her, taking in the mud-streaked dress, the weary lines etched into her young face, the child clinging to her skirt like a lifeline. He nodded slowly. "Keep your pride," he said, surprising her. "I'll feed you both." Relief crashed over her like a wave, so sudden and overwhelming that she could barely speak. Tears blurred her vision, and she nodded frantically, unable to form words. He gestured toward the house. "Come inside. You look like you've walked a mile through hell. Eat first, then we'll see about the work." The mother led the child inside, heart pounding, amazed at the unexpected generosity. The smell of fresh bread and simmering stew greeted them. The child's eyes widened, and a weak smile tugged at the corners of his mouth. She helped him to the table and watched as he began to eat, the ravenous fear in his little eyes slowly fading. Sitting down beside him, she took a deep breath, realizing for the first time in days that they were safe, warm, and, most importantly, fed. In that small, quiet moment, her desperation gave way to something fragile but powerful, hope. The rancher watched them for a moment longer, a quiet understanding passing between them. He had offered more than food, he had offered dignity, and in a world so often cruel, it was a gift greater than any coin or favor could buy. The mother and child stayed inside the ranch house as the late afternoon light waned, spilling warm golden rays across the wooden floor. The smell of stew and freshly baked bread filled the air, a comfort they hadn't felt in weeks. The child's small hands moved eagerly, scooping the food into his mouth, eyes wide with amazement and relief. The mother sat beside him, quietly eating, her pride slowly softening under the rancher's gentle presence. She realized that for the first time in days, neither of them had to worry about hunger, an unfamiliar, almost shocking relief. Once the child had finished, the rancher led the mother outside to show her the work she could do. "I won't ask you to do anything dangerous," he said, scratching the back of his neck. "Just chores around the ranch, feeding chickens, gathering firewood, mending fences, and tending to the garden. You'll start small and see how it goes." The mother nodded, grateful for the chance, yet apprehensive. Her hands were rough and unpracticed in farm labor, but determination lit a spark within her tired spirit. She would do anything to protect her child. Over the next few days, the mother adapted quickly. Her small hands learned the rhythm of feeding the chickens, filling the troughs with grains, and gathering eggs. She learned to chop firewood with care, stacking logs neatly near the fireplace. The rancher guided her patiently, offering tips and quiet encouragement. Slowly, she found a rhythm, the tasks becoming familiar, almost soothing. For the first time, her pride was not a burden but a companion, driving her to do her best. Evenings at the ranch became a time of warmth. After chores, they gathered for supper, sitting at the long wooden table, sharing meals and simple conversation. The child laughed, a sound the mother had not heard in weeks, a fragile melody that lifted her heart. The rancher shared stories of the land, the seasons, and his years as a rancher, tales of hardship and triumph that made the small ranch feel like a world apart from the harsh town beyond the fences. In these moments, the mother realized that sustenance was not only in bread and stew but also in trust, kindness, and the quiet moments of belonging. One afternoon, as the sun set over the rolling fields, the mother paused by the garden, tending to rows of young vegetables. She breathed deeply, savoring the earthy smell of soil and growth. Her child played nearby, calling out excitedly at a small rabbit darting across the yard. For the first time since arriving in town, she dared to imagine a future, one where hunger would not dominate their days, and where safety and dignity were not luxuries but daily realities. The rancher watched from the porch, his eyes thoughtful. He had not set out to change lives, he had only offered food to a struggling mother and child. Yet he saw the subtle transformation, the mother's posture straighter, her confidence returning, her eyes no longer clouded with fear. And in that quiet, golden evening, he knew he had given them more than work or bread. He had given them hope, and sometimes, he reflected, hope was the most sustaining nourishment of all. Weeks passed at the ranch, and life slowly settled into a gentle rhythm. The mother woke each morning before dawn, the first light brushing the horizon with soft pink and gold. She would quietly tiptoe past her sleeping child, stepping into the crisp air to begin the day's chores. Feeding the chickens, watering the garden, and mending fences became almost meditative tasks, their repetition grounding her in a way she hadn't felt for months. The rancher occasionally checked on her, offering advice or a small nod of approval, but mostly allowed her the dignity of earning her place without interference. The child, now stronger from proper meals and rest, explored the wide open spaces of the ranch with newfound energy. He chased butterflies across the sunlit fields, tumbled in the soft grass, and laughed freely, a sound that had become the mother's daily joy. Watching him, she felt a quiet pride, a sense of security she hadn't imagined possible just weeks earlier. She realized that the ranch had become more than a shelter, it was a sanctuary, a place where she and her child could reclaim the life that hardship had stolen. Though work was hard, the mother embraced each task with diligence. She discovered strength in herself that she hadn't known existed, the ability to lift heavy buckets, repair splintered wood, and endure the long hours under the sun. Each day, she returned to the house with calloused hands and aching muscles, yet her spirit felt lighter. She could smile without guilt, laugh without fear, and rest without anxiety. The rancher's quiet guidance had done more than teach her chores, it had restored her confidence. Evenings were filled with warmth and small conversations. The mother and child would sit at the table, sharing meals and occasionally listening to the rancher recount stories of the old frontier. Sometimes he spoke of his own hardships, the droughts, the long winters, and the loneliness of life on the prairie. Other times, he offered little lessons, not through lectures but through simple observations about life, resilience, and kindness. These moments, though unremarkable to an outsider, became precious threads weaving a sense of family between the three of them. One late afternoon, the mother paused near the garden, watching the sun dip below the horizon, painting the sky in brilliant hues of orange and lavender. Her child ran to her, breathless from chasing a stray rabbit, eyes sparkling with excitement. She scooped him into her arms, holding him tightly, feeling the steady rise and fall of his chest. For the first time in her life, she dared to dream of the future, not just surviving, but thriving. She understood that the ranch was no longer just a temporary refuge, it had become home, a place where hope, dignity, and love coexisted. From the porch, the rancher observed silently, a faint smile tugging at his weathered face. He had offered nothing more than food and work, yet the transformation before him was profound. The mother's courage, the child's laughter, and the quiet sense of belonging filled the ranch with life and purpose. He knew then that his simple act of kindness had done more than feed their bodies, it had nourished their souls. And sometimes, he reflected, the greatest reward was simply witnessing the quiet blossoming of hope. The days at the ranch continued in their quiet, steady rhythm, but the mother noticed a subtle change within herself. The constant anxiety and fear that had once shadowed her every move were slowly being replaced with confidence and hope. She moved through the chores with ease now, her hands calloused but skilled, her mind sharper and more alert. Her child thrived under her care, laughing freely, chasing the chickens or rolling down the grassy slopes of the ranch yard. Each smile, each burst of laughter, felt like a victory against the hunger and despair that had once consumed them. One crisp morning, as frost clung to the edges of the wooden fences, the mother carried a small basket filled with eggs, fresh vegetables, and herbs from the garden. Her heart beat quickly, not from the work, but from a desire to express her gratitude. She approached the rancher, who was leaning against the porch railing, sipping a mug of coffee and watching the rising sun. "I want to repay you somehow," she said, her voice trembling slightly. "For everything you've done. For feeding us, for letting us stay, I want to help in some way." The rancher shook his head slowly, his eyes softening. "You've done all the work yourself," he said. "You've cared for your child, tended the land, and earned every bit of this. That's more than enough." His words carried a weight far greater than any payment could have held. She realized then that his generosity had not been a transaction, it had been a gift of dignity, a rare and precious thing in a world that often demanded survival at the cost of pride. The mother felt a warmth rise in her chest, a mixture of relief and profound gratitude. She returned to the house with the child, placing the basket gently on the table. The child peered curiously inside, his tiny fingers brushing the fresh vegetables, his eyes bright with wonder. She knelt beside him, ruffling his hair. "See," she whispered, "we're safe now. We have what we need." He smiled, a pure, unguarded expression of trust and happiness, and she realized that the true gift of the rancher's kindness was not just food or shelter, it was the peace of mind that allowed her to dream again. That evening, as the sun dipped below the horizon, casting the prairie in a soft golden glow, the three of them sat on the porch together. The child leaned against his mother, tired but content, while the mother rested her hands in her lap, feeling a calm she had not known in years. The rancher sat a few feet away, quiet but present, his gaze sweeping across the fields and the small home that had become a sanctuary. Words were unnecessary, the bond between them, forged in hardship and nurtured by kindness, spoke volumes. In the fading light, the mother understood that this ranch was more than a refuge, it was hope made tangible. It was a place where dignity was preserved, where love could quietly flourish, and where even the smallest acts of generosity could change lives. And as the stars began to twinkle in the night sky above the prairie, she whispered a silent prayer of gratitude, knowing that they had found more than food and shelter, they had found a home, a family, and the unshakable strength to face whatever the future might hold.